Thank you, Matt. Yeah, I know. Starting off hot. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Adam Dappolite. I'm from UNH. I'm a Senate intern this semester. I'm looking forward to a great semester with you all in the Senate. A little bit about me. I'm from Westborough, Massachusetts, and for those of you who might not know where that is, because it is a small town, it's about 40 minutes west of Boston, so a nice commute there. Just a little bit more. I'm a political science and international affairs dual major. This is my senior year, and that is crazy to say out loud. Feels like time flew by, especially with COVID and everything. I was talking with Matthew just a little bit ago about that. I'm a part of Model UN and Student Senate at UNH and have enjoyed my time thoroughly there. And I look forward to meeting each and every one of you more in the coming semester.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? What do you like to do when you're not in school? What kind of activities do you like?
I love hiking, skiing, so perfect for New Hampshire. Moving out of Mass into New Hampshire made the right transition in that choice. Furthermore, I mean, I'm an Eagle Scout, so everything camping, hiking, and then backpacking too. Again, all great choices for New Hampshire. Other than that, I golf in the summer and springtime. And I try and get out with my brother doing other sports that he loves to do, so like baseball, soccer, hockey. He's the more sports-oriented of the two of us. I'm more academics, but I still try and get out when I can.
Great. Well, thank you. I appreciate you doing that and just talking about yourself a little bit. Yeah. And we all look forward to working with you during the semester.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Matthew, are you ready? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and open the public hearing on Senate Bill 327 and invite the prom senators, Senator Lou D'Alessandro, to come forward and introduce the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and distinguished members of the committee. For the record, I'm Senator Lou D'Alessandro. I represent District 20, Manchester Wards 2, 3, 4, 10, 11, and 12. And I come before you as the prime sponsor of Senate Bill 327 FN. My background in athletics, I was a player in my days collegiately, and I was a coach. And having seen what's happened in terms of athletics as we speak, as the years have gone by, the number of really atrocities committed against officials, I think it's really reprehensible, and I find it to be way beyond the pale. So when some people came to me and asked me to sponsor this piece of legislation, I was very happy to do it. When you become an official, you're there to make sure that the game is conducted properly, to make sure that all of the participants get their fair assessment, and if a penalty is called for an infraction, obviously, you assess it and you move forward. But what's happened is that it's becoming a screaming match between the audience and the officials, and the number of officials that are attacked. I think it's awful to see what's happened. I mean, some people run out on the field or run out on the court and really attack officials. And the officials are just trying to do their job. They're trying to control the game, to make the game good for both parties, and to make sure that a fair assessment is made and that the game comes out, you know, with everybody in pretty good shape. And that's not the case in today's world. Today's world has become crazy, and as I said, I've been in the business a long period of time, and I think it's right and just that a piece of legislation like this come before you and be brought and made into law. Because it's very hard to get people to officiate games now. Very difficult. Usually it was a parent who, you asked a parent to fill in or something of that nature. I know many times when my kids were playing Little League baseball or playing soccer, or even when my children were participating in other activities, you always asked someone to help out because there wasn't enough, we couldn't afford, to get the officials, and officials are hard to find. So that's the basis of the piece of legislation, Madam Chair. And I hope that there'll be people here who will give you actual incidents that have taken place that really have hurt the game and have hurt the ability to attract people to officiate at the game. And I'm going to apologize to you because I've got finance going on as we speak, and we're going to exact a lot of bills, so I've got to leave and get there. But I thank you for your attention to this matter. I'm happy to answer any queries that you might have, and I hope that you'll act favorably on this piece of legislation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator. Any questions? Senator Gannon.
Thank you. Thanks for taking my question, Senator. So everything seems great. Just one little thing, if you could help me out. And again, I'm a D2 athlete from St. A, so I'll defer to your Division I. Though my freshman year, we did beat UNH in 1980 in cross country, but I'll remind you of my one shining moment. Harassment. So you go to hockey games. I've seen you at UNH games in past years.
Yes.
And so we're all picking on the goalie and the other team, or not all of us, civ. So then you go to the official and they make a bad call. And so people, are you blind and whatever, that's not harassment, right?
Oh.
It would be much more, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you for the comments, thank you for the question. Harassment is when they actually go after an official.
Okay.
You've seen that. They actually
I thought
attack
that'd be
them.
the assault part.
Yeah, right, the assault part. They actually attack them.
Okay.
And I think what's happened is many people who are very good officials have been discouraged to keep going, to keep in the business.
Thank you, Senator. You answered my question well, as always.
Well, the voice of public radio, I appreciate that. The number.
Don't let that out to my voters,
You
sir.
flooded the airwaves this morning.
Senator, I just have a quick question. When we talk about harassment, we're talking about people that constantly email, perhaps follow or stalk a sports official. I mean, we know sometimes parents and people that watch sports get very passionate about teams they support and individuals. And so we have heard of instances where they've followed them home, they've sent emails, they've made phone calls to their homes and things like that.
Right.
So do you really think that maybe stalking should be included in this as well?
Well, thank you very much for the comments. Certainly, because I know as a coach, I got those kinds of comments. You're no goddamn good. I don't know why you're doing this, why you do that. But I think when it gets down to threatening your children, which has happened, I mean, that's the latest thing. They'll see your kid at school or something of that nature. Yeah, so yes, in the stalking situation, that's become, I think, a modus operandi of how people conduct themselves today. And I find that obviously very discouraging.
Okay, thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay.
So again, I apologize. I'm going to excuse myself.
No, Senator, that's the reason why I had you go first.
Thank you.
Hopefully just a quick in and then I know you have to go back to finance, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a number of people who are members of associations, and I'm just gonna call you right down the line. How about Stuart Dedopoulos?
Could I have Mr. Flynn go before me because he's much more involved in this than I am.
Okay, would you like to come up together?
I'll follow a one-man show.
Okay, Mr. Flynn, that's fine.
Thank you, Stu. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Kevin Flynn. I'm from Hopkinton, and I'm a member of the New Hampshire Baseball Umpires Association. I've umpired baseball from the Cal Ripken level through high school and adult recreation leagues, and I really would like to thank my brother and sister officials here behind us. We've got football, baseball, lacrosse, softball, probably missing a few. Volleyball, thank you. All right, thank you. Any observer of sports in New Hampshire or across the country will tell you there has been a marked decline in sportsmanship and increased abuse toward the men and women who officiate these games, played predominantly by children. That behavior often manifests itself as acts of physical intimidation and assault against officials. Nationwide, we have seen outrageous confrontations caught on camera phones of umpires being punched by coaches, referees intentionally blindsided by players, or attacked by parents charging the court from the bleachers or following officials back to their cars in the parking lot. Videos go viral and they make the evening news. They shock the public, embarrass the community, and tarnish the game. Recently, the National Association of Sports Officials quizzed New Hampshire officials for baseball, football, basketball, softball, ice hockey, soccer, swimming, and wrestling. 1 in 10 said they've been physically assaulted during or after a game. And 2 out of 5 report feeling unsafe or fearing for their safety due to participants' behavior. Those are New Hampshire officials. I'd like to point out that the officials who do get paid are not receiving large amounts of money, anywhere from $40 to $100 a game. They spend large chunks of their free time driving across the corners of our state so our children can play a game. 20% of the officials in New Hampshire are retirees, and a growing number are teenagers looking to break in. And since 2017, nationwide, 50,000 officials have left the profession, citing harassment as the leading cause. This has created a shortage of umpires and referees to cover the thousands of organized league games in the Granite State. This fall, New Hampshire high schools needed to rearrange their schedules because there aren't enough referees. I've had to umpire sub-varsity level games all by myself. It's limiting the options for sports leagues at every level. For some reason, certain people believe they can say threatening and derogatory things or behave in ways on a field or a gymnasium that they would never do at work or in public. They act as if state laws do not apply within the confines of a ball field or a gymnasium, that unwanted contact or threats of violence are just part of the game. We maintain that assault is assault, and that criminal threatening is criminal threatening. We want spectators and athletes to know that, and we want police and prosecutors to remember that. 22 other states have laws to protect sports officials and impose appropriate penalties for offenders. SB 327 FN is a modest proposal to address the issue and provide a measure of protection for sports officials in New Hampshire. Although some prefer its penalties could be enforced sooner in the criminal process, its mere presence on the books sends a message. If the game is not safe for officials, it's not safe for children. SB 327 FN is not meant to criminalize arguing calls or codify sportsmanship. It is, however, a strong step towards preventing the behavior having a deleterious effect on sports in New Hampshire. Thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any further questions you may have on the issue.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Mr. Flynn. Are there any questions from the committee? I have a few. I brought up the issue of stalking, whether or not stalking should be included in this as well.
Yes, I think if the committee were inclined to amend the bill to include stalking, if that is, if the definitions are not covered by criminal threatening or whatever, stalking, I think you do bring up a good point. A lot of us have been followed back to our cars in a parking lot and menaced in that way. And so stalking and menacing, different states have different definitions of particular incidents, but we would definitely support anything that expanded and strengthened the bill.
And my final question is, it has to do with the bill, and I'm sorry, do you have a copy of the bill?
I do not have a copy of it.
It's on line 24 in section 3. It says the court may prohibit a person convicted of an offense under this section from acting as a participant. Do you think it would be appropriate to put in the word spectator as well? Because I can see where something happens actually on the field.
Yeah.
Where a player assaults a sports official. But when you have parents or adults, even other children coming out of the stands to attack a sports official, they're not participants in the sport, they're spectators. So I'm just curious.
Sure. Senator, thank you for the question. I would point to line 11 that defines participant as any person acting as a spectator, coach, administrator, or player.
Okay, that's good. All right, thank you. You answered my question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. The chair will now call Stuart Denopoulos. Okay.
Thank you. I like to think of myself, like every other official, as a one-man show as well, by the way. I do have some material that I would just leave for the committee to look at later on if you find it helpful. I wanted to preface my remarks by just reminding everybody who has never officiated that at the high school, junior varsity, freshman, and middle school level, the arguments are so vicious because there's so little at stake, as Henry Kissinger said one time. My name is Stuart Denopoulos, as I said. I am an attorney. I practice in Durham, New Hampshire. I'm part of the Coolidge Law Firm now, which is actually located in Somersworth. We merged our firms. I've been an attorney in New Hampshire since February 1, 1977. 6 years before I became an attorney, I became a certified basketball official when I was at the University of Vermont as an undergraduate. I am in the middle of my 53rd year officiating basketball, and I'm in my, by my calculation, my 27th year officiating on behalf of high school soccer. I am here today not only in an individual capacity, but I also am representing Bill Aubin, our president of the New Hampshire Soccer Officials Association, who asked me to speak on his behalf. From my perspective, and I just had a couple of comments about the language of the bill that I'd ask you to think about. I have been assaulted myself, actually, at some point between, I think it was 1977 and 1981, when I was working for Tony Catalfo in Dover. I did a men's league game, which is always a mistake when you're refereeing basketball. And somebody didn't like a call I made. So, of course, at the end of the game, when I was walking out, this fellow who looked like a weightlifter, and I was even more puny looking than I look now, came up to me, said something about the call, took his hand, put it under my chin, and put me up against the wall, and said something threatening. So I thought he was going to hit me, so I didn't say anything. I walked away. What he didn't realize, I don't think, was that I was an attorney at the time. So the next day, I went down to see my friend at the Dover Police Department. I gave him a 5 or 8 page written statement. I asked him to have the guy arrested. And the end of the story was about 2 months later, one of my friends called me and said, I've got this fellow in my office. He's been accused of assaulting you. What do you want to do? And I said, has he paid you? He said, oh yeah, I got the money up front. I said, I don't care what you do. I wanted him arrested, and I wanted him to be fined. That, I think, from my perspective, is the most critical thing that this bill addresses. I left some, in the packet, some information about my background. I've been involved in writing about sports officials, their rights and liabilities since I was in law school. I took a paper that I had written with a friend of mine, and we converted it into some articles that were published by Referee Magazine. So I have a longstanding interest in this. We're never going to change people's behavior if they want to act inappropriately at a game. That drives people away from officiating so that they never decide to even try it. And on occasion, it drives people away who have been doing it for a long period of time because you just get sick of people and the way they act in the stands. You can't legislate good behavior, but you can draw the line with people. And the best thing that this bill does, which I haven't seen in previous bills, is that it sends a message to people that if you commit a crime, which I think gets to the questions that were being asked before, we're talking about criminal activity. We're talking about assaulting people. We're talking about criminal harassment. We're talking about criminal threatening. We're talking about criminal stalking, which is a great addition, I think, to the bill. And when you cross the line and you commit a crime, under the criminal code right now, there is no provision, and I've been a lawyer for 47 years. I used to be a public defender, and I've done criminal defense work for all 47 years, so I'm pretty familiar with the code. There's no provision in the code at the present time that would specifically authorize a judge to prohibit someone from entering an athletic contest after an assault on an official or a threat on an official. there's an argument that that could be part of a probationary, probation imposed as a result of a conviction, but this specifically, I think, hits people right between the eyes if they're convicted, because there's nothing worse I could think of as a parent myself if somebody said to you, you just did something, I'm not going to send you to jail, I'm not going to give you a fine, you're just not going to see your kid play basketball next year. See if it's on the internet. I think that's going to get people's behavior. I think the problem we're going to face as officials is that this is a message that the schools have to send to the parents at the start of every season. There's a new law. If you get arrested, there's a chance you're not coming in here. That's beyond your scope, but I think that this is a good start. I just had a couple of suggestions to think about the bill as I read it as a person who's done criminal defense work. It talks about the offense of harming or threatening a sports official, rather than saying that harming or threatening a sports official is a criminal offense. And I'm sure that there was a reason it was stated like that, but offense in its general sense usually refers to a violation. It can refer, I suppose, to a misdemeanor and a felony, but oftentimes we use the word offense as a low-level offense, like speeding or something like that, or disorderly conduct. So I had a question about why that was written like that. And then it talks about, under the penalties, about a person who violates an order in addition to being held in criminal contempt or subject to probation violation, if applicable. Well, you can't be placed on probation for a violation or a Class B misdemeanor, but you can for a Class A misdemeanor. So my suggestion is that perhaps, if it's appropriate, to designate this as a misdemeanor, and if it's written like that into the criminal code, if it doesn't say it has to be a Class A misdemeanor, if you make it a misdemeanor, it's a criminal offense, the prosecutor can decide whether it's punishable by jail time or just punishable by a fine and banishment. And I think that would give prosecutors a lot more leeway in dealing with people who need to be dealt with. I have no further questions other than that, and I'd be happy to take any questions if you have any.
Thank you very much for your testimony this afternoon. Senator Chandley has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for taking my question. As I understand it, criminal harassment, assault, stalking of a sports official would be a crime, is criminal, and the story you told us, points out that can be prosecuted. So as far as I can tell, the only thing this bill changes is allowing the courts to impose that ban on or barring the perpetrator from attending a sports event. Am I right about that?
That's the way I read it.
So, thank you. And I guess my question for you is, do you find that the schools or the arenas or the overarching governing bodies of the organizations are willing to take that step outside of the legal system?
I'll speak on behalf of myself and not on behalf of the Soccer Officials Association.
Okay.
No. And I'll tell you why I think that is. This is a small state. Something happens at a school, you go over to the athletic director or the person in charge, assuming that there is a person in charge, and you ask them to do something to somebody up in the stands, to go talk to them. If it's a small community, chances are that the person you're talking to knows, I'll say a guy, because it's usually a guy, he knows the guy in the stands. He probably is thinking, well, I know Joe, he's a good guy usually. He's just like a little wound up because his daughter's playing. Maybe they have beers together after the game. It puts the athletic directors in an awkward position. What I'm hoping is that if this bill passes and schools are put on notice, they can tell the coaches to have meetings with the parents ahead of time that this is what's going to happen to you if you get prosecuted, and maybe that will tamp down the way people act. Like I said, I've done this for 53 years. I think it's getting worse and worse. I just think it's a reflection of the way society is.
Thank you.
And I left you a quote from a case from North Carolina in the packet. I won't tell you what it says, but it's perfect.
Thank you.
Okay?
I just have a quick question. If this should become law, do you think this should be posted on baseball fields? You can put them up on the fence so the public knows that if they assault a sports official, there are very serious ramifications. Schools could put them in school gymnasiums as well.
I think so, and I think the parents should get a packet when their kids are playing. And the parents should, usually it's the parent or some relative who's always yelling, because they're, like I said, they're so invested. It's such an important thing for them. The more that people know about this, the better chance we have of doing something for the problem. But it's certainly not going to cure it, but it's a step.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Are there any further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
The chair will call Gary Arcel. Good afternoon, Mr. Arcel.
Arcisi.
Oh, I thought it was,
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
thought it
I'm
was,
Gary Arcisi. I'm from Jaffrey, and I've been an umpire since 1989, and a member of the High School Association since 1997. And I want to thank the sponsor for this, because I think that it is important. Luckily, I have not had too many problems, only been followed to my car once. Had a manager refuse to leave the field once. But I think it happens all over the place, and it's just a matter of time before something serious happens somewhere to someone. And I think it's a great idea to post it at the fields, and also probably with organizations like the American Legion, the New Hampshire Interscholastic Sports Association, that type of thing.
thank you very much for your
Okay.
testimony. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you.
Welcome.
The chair will call Jim Rivers. Good afternoon, Mr. Rivers.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. There aren't many things that would get me out of retirement back to this building, but this is one of them. My name is Jim Rivers. I have been an official since 1986, officiating in multiple sports, all over the United States and in Canada. I am the past president of the New Hampshire Softball Umpires Association. And by the way, the executive board instructed me to let you folks know that they are in support of this bill as well. Kevin alluded to the fact that we've lost 50,000 officials around the country over the last few years, some of it to retirement, some of it to COVID, but a lot of it to harassment. And in trying to recruit officials, as I get older, we're trying to bring young blood in, I get, oh, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to put myself through that. I'm not going to put myself through the aggravation of dealing with parents and coaches, fans. But I would like to put in a good word for New Hampshire coaches. I don't want to paint them as being, the 700-pound gorilla in the room. We do have coaches in the state that do get excited and get antsy and may say a few things. But I think the real problem is coaches that come in from out of state. As I've done a lot of summer ball in the state, and coaches come in from Connecticut and New York and upstate New York and Rhode Island. For some reason, they think they're the second coming of Casey Stengel, for those of you who might remember Casey Stengel. Some of you don't, I'm sure. But they seem to be the problem. The other issue is, too, is when you have summer ball, also, I think Stu alluded to men's softball, alcohol is involved. These beer leagues, as they call them, that play at 6 o'clock at night, and they use umpires, and they are drinking. Fans that come in from out of state for summer ball at local parks in the area, they sneak in alcohol. That adds to the problem. I also think we need to be careful with the word harassment. We have to be very clear what harassment is. I know we've talked about it. I mean, I don't want there are some, believe it or not, thin-skinned officials, they're out there, who might use this for any little thing was said to them. I think we have to be very clear what harassment is. I like the idea of adding stalking to this as well. And also damage to vehicles. That happens frequently. An official will go back to his car in the parking lot and the air's out of his tires, or there's a scratch on his door. Is it hard to find the person that did that? Maybe. But I also think damage to one's personal possessions is also important. Other than that, if you have any questions, I fully support this. I thank my good friend Senator D'Alessandro for bringing this to light. Having umpired all over the country, it's only a matter of time for, it's a sad commentary of where we are today.
Thank you very much for your testimony,
Okay.
Mr. Rivers. Any questions? Mr. Rivers, we got a question.
I couldn't let you get away.
Of course you couldn't.
Thank you. So I guess my question is, as I mentioned earlier, these are already, the crimes already are crimes. It is already in statute, these can be prosecuted. The change here is to the potential repercussion.
Right.
How often are you seeing in your work and in your circles any of these being charged and prosecuted?
Physical assault, I've seen threats of physical assault. I've had people follow me to the parking lot and threatened. I've never been personally assaulted. I have been fortunate, and since I've umpired, I've never had to throw a coach out of a game, ever. But it is happening, and it's happening in some parts of the state. It has not happened to me. I think we have to be careful too. If you ban someone from going to an event, you don't want to punish the child. And there are a lot of single-parent households who bring their kids to the game, and if they act like a fool and then get banned from the game, how does the child get to the game? I think we need to be careful there.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rivers. The chair will call Dave Salvacion.
Close enough.
Okay, close. That's good. At least I didn't butcher it too badly. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name's Dave Salvation. Salvation for you guys, I can't pronounce it. It's quite all right. I've been an official for women's lacrosse for 20-plus years, only women's lacrosse. I've also officiated men's and women's soccer, but I currently also coach soccer at Portsmouth High School. With that said, I kind of get both sides of the world. And I appreciate and respect officials that do their job properly. Now, I come to the field as a lacrosse official, do what's necessary to become an official. Now, to become an official in lacrosse especially, you have to go through various levels, and it starts with the young ones. The little ones, they have to learn how to play the game. How do they learn how to play the game? Through parents, through coaches. And how the coaches know that? They follow the rule book, and so do the officials. I train a number of youth officials to come through the ranks, and makes me proud when they become collegiate officials. But there are times where I've lost a number of officials because of parents and fans. Now, lacrosse and soccer and most sports are a social game. They want to be part of the team. But when they find out there have been instances where, oh, you're an official, you practice becoming an official, you shouldn't do that because it's not good for you. That type of situation occurs. In addition to that, think of the other ramification. If it gets on social media, basically when you become college eligible, guess who reads those social medias? It's the upcoming colleges that do that. And it's necessary for them to interview those students and, okay, why was this written about you? Or why did you write about this? So we teach our officials to be very cognizant of what they say and do on the field before and after. Now, during a college game, I have to be at the field an hour and a half behind, before the game starts. That's a lot of time, and we're hanging out on the field getting ready for the game. And then we leave as a team, meaning my fellow officials, to making sure we're okay, but technically we have to stay an hour and a half afterwards to do our paperwork that's necessary for that. So officials are at the field both beginning and end, and there's opportunity for certain things to happen with agitated fans. And I've had that happen to me during a college game, where a fan came out of the stands after the game. I took my fellow officials to their cars, and I got caught between two cars. And this one official was drunker than a skunk and not questioning what the call was made. To make a long story short, yes, I had to defend myself, but it never came to blows. But I knew if it was going to happen, it was going to happen between the cars. And I don't back down. As an official, I won't back down for my integrity of the game. It's necessary this bill goes through to protect the officials that have those situations. And also to send a message that it won't be tolerated. It cannot be tolerated. We've lost so many officials coming through, growing up, because of these situations, because of the social media, because of the stigma that that officials get from their own classmates, and that should not be. That's just coming from the heart. I've been around the country doing lacrosse, and I've noticed where in certain states, there's immediate police presence right at the field, no matter what. Other states, they won't come until they're called. I think if we have a authoritarian presence nearby, not necessarily security or police or whatever, but somebody at the field at all times. We do in New Hampshire, there has to be a side official for every game. But a lot of times they're just kind of fold in the background until something happens. That side official will take over. But that should be, their presence should be known, I guess you could say, what I'm asking for, to help deter some of this actions. And when it does happen, it has to happen quickly, the actions toward that. Other than that, thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony this
Thank you.
afternoon. Are there any questions for this?
Good, thanks.
Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate it. The chair will call Christopher Lins. I think it's Lins. Is that right? Yeah, well, I'm like 1 for 5 or 6.
Good afternoon. I work with Europeans, so I never know what time zone I'm in half the time. So, my name is Christopher Lins. Thank you for taking the time to meet with us today. I think it's important. I do not have a prepared statement, but a little bit of my background is I was a parent, a professional sideline parent. I was an athlete, of course. I was a coach, and now I'm a game official. And I joined the ranks of the Lacrosse Officials Association and the Football Officials Association as a way to give back to the games that I loved. And I loved coaching, I loved watching, etc. And I did so in the face of, the epiphanal moment came for me when I was coaching a lacrosse game, and my parents' sidelines were getting a little obnoxious, and they were screaming at the officials, one of which was a young man doing youth games. And I thought to myself, one of the contracts that I have my parents sign when I'm coaching is a behavior contract. It says you will not use any verbs on the sideline. You will cheer for your children only, no interaction with the officials, no verbs, no coaching, no attacking the officials, etc. I think there needs to be a little bit of give and take, because yelling at the official is a little bit of part of the game. Just like the coaches yelling at their players, there's a little bit of that rhythm and cadence to the actual athletic event that is okay. But let me share with you some experiences after my first year, this past year being my first fall season with the Football Officials Association, and last spring, this coming spring will be my 4th season with the Lacrosse Officials Association. So there was a situation with youth football in Raymond where there was pepper spray. I think that fits the description of assault. Not on me personally, and it wasn't actually on an official, but the officials were nearby and we were in close proximity to that particular issue of assault. It was actually a parent assaulting a coach on the field. There was an instance in Laconia where the fans in the stands were so intimidating that the opposing football coach suggested that maybe we should call it. Maybe we should just end this now. I don't want my kids to see this. And I think it's important too, because these examples, that particular example is important because we're there modeling behavior. Everybody is there modeling behavior for these kids, and half the kids that are being belligerent, they see the coaches, they see their parents, they see other parents, they see people assault game officials, and they're modeling that behavior for these kids, and so these kids are just going to perpetuate that cycle, and it's getting worse. I mean, we're here today because it's getting to the point where we need to do something about it. I'm not a big believer, for those of the people that know me, know my politics, know my thoughts. You know, I want maximum freedom. But at the end of the day, we need to put some healthy boundaries in place. And I think this bill does a good job of putting some healthy boundaries in place as more of a deterrent. I know there's some questions about, you know, how effective is that deterrent, but I think there needs to be something done. You know, my 19-year-old son walked away. He got his soccer official's patch and walked away from it because he didn't want to deal with it anymore, as another example. So I just wanted to give you some firsthand experience. You know, I don't have 20 years behind me. I look forward to 20 more years. I mean, those that know me know that I'm not real intimidated by this, but there are times where you're looking over your shoulder when you walk back to your car. I mean, I find it just flabbergasting to me that we have to have a police escort to and from the fields for these high school games. It's just, that in and of itself, the optics in and of itself are really poor. And it's reflective of the environment that we coach in, that we play in, that we officiate in. So I fully support the bill. I know there's probably some language massage that needs to happen to get it through, you know, for passage in the Senate and passage in the House, et cetera. But I think this serves as a healthy boundary, more of a deterrent, and I hope that you'll support it.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Welcome.
Okay, everyone who had marked that they wanted to speak has spoken. Are you Coretta Lee? I put a maybe. You put a maybe, okay. If you want to come forward, please, and introduce yourself and speak to us about why you want this bill passed.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, the committee. Thank you for hearing me. I just want to say, I want to piggyback on what everyone said. But I think one thing that people didn't say is, I love to officiate. Everybody does it for different reasons. People do it for extra income. People do it for just because they're just doing it for fun, maybe some fun, as I do. This is my fun. But at the end of the day, I shouldn't have to worry about Coretta because of me wanting to have my fun. So let me start back with introducing myself. I'm Coretta Lee. I'm on the NHFOA for football, NHVOA for volleyball, and IBO for basketball. So I have quite a bit of years of experience. I've been the athlete, the parent, the coach, the official, and now I'm the grandparent sitting at the field. And so I feel that I've been on all those areas. It's affecting our children, the way that the coaches and spectators treat us, because, for an example, if a coach is saying something or a spectator is saying something, we notice that a child may say that as well. So they're saying things like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, you didn't miss that call. That is showing that they don't respect us. So if they're not respecting us as officials, they're not respecting adults, and that's a problem as they're growing up. To talk about, you know, our adult leagues, we have issues with them as well. We've had officials throw footballs at them, at their heads, at their lower body parts. We've had tons of things that have happened. With me, as a woman, I will say that I've had players that have cursed out officials right in front of me, turn around and say, oh, I'm sorry, Miss Lady. It doesn't make it any better because I'm still an official. I do think that things need to be looked at in a different way because we are losing things. You know, I have a 30-year-old and a 24-year-old right now. My 24-year-old says, no way, she will not officiate. Even though I've coached, she will not do it because when they're sitting in the stands, they're hearing the things that are said to us. So there's no way. My son does basketball with me, but he won't do some of those games where he feels that he can be harassed, you know. But like I said, I just wanted to say I was taking a lot of little notes and things on here that people were saying, but I just wanted to be able to mirror that and piggyback and say that we do need to be protected. I enjoy doing this, but if I've got coaches and spectators, parents and everything coming at me, I don't have to do it. I want to do it, but it's not worth it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions?
Thank you.
Seeing none, thank you very much, Ms. Lee. Okay, are there any other members of the public that would like to speak to Senate Bill 327? Okay, seeing none, we're going to close the public hearing. And the next bill? Thank you, Matthew.
My daughter loves to cook.
Oh, it can be tough.
It's good money, though.
Yeah, well, it's,
Oh, no,
people
I'm
can,
with you. Excited.
people are not very good. They're not nice sometimes. Okay, I get to go next. Okay, how many people do we have want to talk? Okay, these, this one, this one, this one. Okay, he supports it. Okay, okay, here you go. This is, okay. This hopefully won't take too long.
I got Whitley with Michelle help me.
Ah,
Well, that's just sweet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Get out of here. Senate Judiciary is back in session. We're going to hear SB 361. Welcome, Senator Carson.
good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. For the record, my name is Sharon Carson, and I have the pleasure of representing Senate District 14, comprising the towns of Londonderry, Hudson, and Auburn. And I have this afternoon for your consideration Senate Bill 361, relative to legal services by professionals. I think we had a bill dealing with this a few years ago, and it's been a very, very successful program. So what this bill does is basically two things. It extends the ongoing paraprofessional pilot project by 5 years and expands it to all district division and family division locations. Currently, it's only in 3 locations in Manchester, Berlin, and Franklin. Just to refresh your memory a little bit about the existing pilot, again, it was a small, meaningful step towards better access to justice for low-income Granite Staters. It limits the scope to certain civil cases involving domestic violence, stalking, certain family law cases, and certain housing case types. And it ensures that paraprofessional representation is high quality and consistent with legal ethics. The feedback that we've been getting is it's working out great, and so let's expand it and still keep track of it, but let's make sure that it is available in all courts. So at this point, I'm going to conclude my testimony, and there's some folks here that would like to talk to you about the program itself. So thank you all very much for your attention to this matter this afternoon.
Thank you, Senator.
The chair is going to call Bill Woodbury. Oh, no, what am I doing? Good afternoon, Mr. Woodbury.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak here today. And my name is Bill Woodbury, and I serve as Legislative Chair for New Hampshire Association for Justice. I am also a practicing attorney in Laconia, practicing as a general litigator, but with a focus largely in family law. We come here today to oppose this bill as written, okay? I want to make it very clear, though, that New Hampshire Association for Justice does not oppose this concept in any way. This is, we believe, a good and I think necessary program for individuals who need lower cost legal assistance. Our concerns are the same that we raised back in 2022 with HB 1343, and we believe that there are certain regulatory mechanisms that should be put in place to avoid confusion, to avoid potential error and abuse. So looking at the law currently, this law covers a broad swath of different, of laws. It covers domestic violence, it covers annulment, divorce and separation, uniform child custody and jurisdiction, income assignment, child support guidelines, parental rights and responsibilities, Military Parents' Rights Act, actions against tenants, prohibited practices in security deposits, and portions of the stalking statute. And our concern is largely that what we don't have are specific guidelines for how supervision is conducted by supervising attorneys. There's no guidelines with respect to fees that may be charged for these services. And there's no guidelines as to how many paraprofessionals one particular attorney may supervise. And we also are concerned that, that there's potential for abuse in that a single attorney could set up a business model whereby many paralegals are being supervised by one attorney, charging lower rates, paying the paraprofessionals at a lower rate, certainly than an associate attorney would receive, and then purporting to supervise all of these paraprofessionals in potentially very high stake, for instance, divorce cases, where there's no mechanism regulating, there's no scope, there's no asset cap or anything for the size of a case that could be handled by a paraprofessional. And I just want to give an example. So under the current statute, a client would be eligible to receive these paraprofessional services if their household income was no greater than 300% of the federal poverty guidelines at the commencement of representation. And what it leaves open is, for instance, if you had a situation where a stay-at-home parent was married to an individual who owned, say, several businesses, and had an income of, say, $250,000, large 401k, other deferred assets, things like that, and left that person would meet the criteria in that their income would likely be less than 300% of the federal poverty guideline. But the divorce would be enormous. The divorce would be highly complex, would involve the need for economists, business appraisers, individuals to draw up qualified domestic relations orders. This would be a highly complex divorce, something that in my office, an associate who was training in family law wouldn't handle for many years, and that's after shadowing me in cases of this nature. So there's no scope, there's no ceiling as to what type of cases these individuals could represent people in. And so we look at the educational requirements in this particular law, and it would be the paraprofessional could have a bachelor's degree in any subject, or an associate's in a law-related subject, and then 2 years experience. But if that associate's was in environmental law, and then they spent 2 years perhaps in a real estate firm, doing closings or things like that, they could conceivably segue right into a job where they're representing people in complex divorce matters. So I think there has to be, there needs to be some regulatory mechanisms around that to make sure that people who are participating in these services are getting, quality legal representation. Again, we're certainly not opposed, to this occurring. I practice in family law courts on a regular basis. I come up against pro se litigants who are clearly in need of some type of representation, and this may bridge that gap. And it is, I think, important. So we are not opposed to the concept. But it does pose that question as to, whether or not there is, potential for abuse here. There's also no continuing education requirement. Attorneys, as you know, we go to law school, we pass the bar, and then we have a yearly continuing education requirement to assure that we're keeping up on the law. That doesn't apply here to these paraprofessionals who, if anybody needs this, it would be these individuals who don't have that advanced, legal education. And there, I think, one suggestion would also be that an individual who comes into a situation, a firm or whatever, where they're going to be practicing as a paraprofessional, it would be advisable that they be required to have some training specific to the type of law they're going to be practicing in. We, as attorneys, when we're first licensed, we go through a boot camp where we look at many different types of law over a period of days, and we're told, basically these are the concerns you have if you're going to be bringing these cases in court and things like that. It's very valuable. But there's nothing like that in this law. So we just feel that with the addition of these things, these people will be better protected. We're also concerned that perhaps the regulations, even though some of the things that we were concerned about a couple of years ago were dealt with the promulgation of Rule 35, Court Rule 35, such as what type of insurance is carried by the supervising attorney. We still want to make sure there's protections as to, does the client know what they're going to be receiving? Like if an attorney is advertising divorce services, is it clear from the get-go that these people are going to be represented by paralegals? The law requires that they be given written notice of that, but are they told that before they go and speak with the attorney, and are they being told that right out of the gate? So we feel those additions, that additional language would be beneficial here. That is generally the position we're taking on this. I'm very happy to take any questions that you may have.
Okay. Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions? Senator Whitley and then Senator Gannon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for taking my question.
Thank you, Senator.
In the original bill, I believe we granted pretty broad authority to the Supreme Court to issue rules. So as a legislature, we have to balance, the need for specificity in statute versus, the importance of various overseeing administrative bodies, who know the field better. And so do you believe that that specific and broad grant of rulemaking authority to the Supreme Court wasn't sufficient?
It's not so much that granting them that broad authority wasn't sufficient. I just think that the focus perhaps was on a need that needed to be filled, the need for lower costs and more available representation, and perhaps emphasis wasn't made on what the level of training or retraining should be, and perhaps the emphasis was not so much on what supervision by the attorney would look like. I think it's very broad, and it relies largely on the rules of professional conduct to guide that. And I think that it's appropriate in this instance, given the high stakes of divorce cases, especially post-divorce cases, child support cases, parenting cases, that the rules be a bit more specific. I understand the concept of the specific sometimes being, the enemy of an effective law, but I think in this instance, these specifics are necessary, guidelines.
Okay, Senator Gannon.
You pretty much did what I wanted. So you think there should be at a minimum areas like domestic violence, custody of the child, certain things where you're going to lose your bodily autonomy to go to prison, that you should have a full attorney and not?
I'm not, I think that it's not so much that for what you just mentioned, you need a full attorney. I think there are very capable people that could represent people in initial domestic violence cases and things like that. I think that subject matter, I think, lends itself better than the large-scale divorces that just have so many pitfalls that that a seasoned attorney could fall into. And, so things like that. No, I think that in domestic violence situations, stalking situations, people need counsel, they need it quickly, they need, so I think this is a program that is well-suited, to things like that. But it needn't be applied to, the much larger, divorces, unless the regulation, I think, is far more specific. Right now, the rule simply indicates that the attorney, if in their judgment, the attorney should be, at their side in court. That's fine, but it's vague, and without the specification as to how many people an attorney can supervise, that could easily get diluted. If you have 5 different paralegals doing work in the family courts, there's going to be a conflict. You're not going to be able to be with every one of them. So I think that's an important way to guide that. If that attorney is by that paralegal side or paraprofessional side at all times, you know what I mean, then your capability, goes up exponentially. But I think there has to be that mechanism to monitor that.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any further questions? Okay. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you very much.
Okay, the chair will call Sarah Matson-Dustin. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, and hello to the members of the committee. Thank you very much for hearing from me today. My name is Sarah Matson-Dustin. I work as the Executive Director at New Hampshire Legal Assistance. I've been a legal aid lawyer for about 16 years. The first thing that I want to share as to why NHLA strongly supports the renewal of the pilot project is that in the 16 years that I've been a legal aid lawyer, not a week has gone past when we have not turned someone away. This bill at its core is not about whether someone gets an attorney or gets a paralegal. This is about whether someone gets a paralegal supervised by an attorney or they get nothing. That is the dynamic here. The bill makes very modest changes to the existing pilot. It only extends it by 5 years and expands it to all district and family division locations. New Hampshire has been at the cutting edge of the expansion of access to justice through the services of professionals other than attorneys. When the pilot first was being considered by this legislature, there were only 4 states in the country that were doing something like that. There are now about 16 that are either implementing a project, so about 9 states are already implementing, including New Hampshire, and another 7 are looking to implement projects. The next is most likely to be Texas, so a huge state moving in this direction. And the programs look very different in all of these different states. Some states have paraprofessional document preparers. Some states are even exploring the idea of independent paralegal practice and non-attorney ownership of law firms. That is not this model. This model is very specific to New Hampshire, using New Hampshire's existing regulatory structure in which a great deal of authority belongs to the Supreme Court to regulate law practice, including this. So I think it is really something that this legislature and the Supreme Court ought to be very proud of, that this is a customized New Hampshire-specific pilot project that has been able to meaningfully advance access to civil legal services while requiring no additional administrative structure, no additional funding. So it really has been a huge success. I want to address some of the concerns related to attorney supervision of paralegals. Was the case before the pilot project and is the case now that legal services provided by paralegals under attorney supervision were not specifically regulated in terms of the number of paralegals that an attorney could supervise, the amount of education, experience, training that a paralegal needed to have in order to provide supporting services to an attorney under attorney supervision. So it is the case now that, for example, a paralegal could prepare documents for a real estate closing under attorney supervision, or a paralegal could prepare draft estate planning documents for review by an attorney. Those services can be billed to the client at the rate established by the law firm for which the paralegal works. So that was the law. That was perfectly permissible and very, very, very routine before this pilot project. The only change is to bring that access to the services of paralegals with attorney supervision into the courtroom in a very narrow category of cases. Most of the states that have experimented with this have focused on family law and housing. That's because that is where there is one of the vastest gaps between the need for legal services and access to attorneys. In New Hampshire, these are cases where the overwhelming majority of litigants in family law and housing cases are going to court alone. So really, this is just about, hey, in these cases where people really, really need access to services, but the thing that they need happens to be in court, let's make sure that those folks too can have the benefit of having services provided by a paralegal with attorney supervision. There are many, I think, ways in which these programs can be structured. The New Hampshire Supreme Court has enacted Rule 35. I put, for your convenience in your packet, both the original bill and Supreme Court Rule 35, so you have those to look at if you'd like. The Supreme Court had a process of publicly promulgating that rule and receiving public comment. I think the rule does put a considerable amount of meat on the bones, and we as an agency have been very happy to comply with those additional requirements. For civil legal services, this has been a game changer. We are emphasizing paralegal hiring in an effort to expand access to our services. It is more cost effective to deliver legal services with paralegals than it is with attorneys. I can also tell you that it is a lot easier to hire paralegals than it is to hire attorneys. So a law firm that has systems in place to supervise non-attorneys is able to do this just as they are able to do it in other contexts. And we have really considered this to be the most transformative innovation in terms of the needs that our clients have to be able to level the playing field in cases like evictions and domestic violence cases, certainly in my time as a legal aid lawyer. So it has been just hugely consequential for us and our clients. I'm very happy to take any questions, and thank you very much, all of you, for your leadership on this issue over the last several years.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions? Senator Chanley, then Senator Whitley.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you. We've heard that the program has been very successful. How is that analysis been done, or is there anything available to substantiate that?
Sure. So there is a reporting process in the Supreme Court rule. So the statute has a reporting process for the Supreme Court to the legislature. Any attorney who supervises a paralegal is required to report twice a year on those cases to the Supreme Court. And that includes, I think, the dates of the representation, the name of the paralegal, the name of the supervisor, the docket number, and the case type. So we have handled, I think, 11 cases by paralegals during the past year. We anticipate that number continuing to grow steadily as we have hired more paralegal advocates in order to be able to eventually support a higher number of cases. It's also the case that attorney discipline and paralegal discipline via attorney supervision requirements is baked right into the statute and into the rule. So the rule specifically contemplates that a grievance can be filed at the attorney discipline office if there is paralegal misconduct, and a paralegal who receives a finding of misconduct is banned from continuing to participate in this program, which is a considerably more impactful in terms of finality than is true for attorney discipline more generally. To my knowledge, I wouldn't know about complaints that are not yet public, but to my knowledge, there also haven't been any complaints. That is personally how I think that we, in this very first year, so we've just finished the first 12 months, that is how I am measuring success, that we are every day proving that this can be done with successful outcomes for clients and without a danger to the public.
And if I can follow up?
Yes, follow up.
So can you tell me what the impetus for expanding it so broadly is?
So the kinds of case types remain the same. So there's no expansion in terms of the subject matter. The expansion in terms of length, I think, is in part to help allow in the future for more in-depth evaluation of the success of the project. I wish in the first instance it had been 3 years, because then we could have had 2 years of data before this was back in front of you all. But so that 5 years will allow the further development of the project. And in terms of all court locations, this is a unified circuit court system. So the family divisions and the district divisions are all part of a statewide circuit court. I don't know that I can't think of any meaningful reason why this ought to be permissible in Manchester, but not permissible in Concord, because all of the courts are subject to the same court rules. Generally, there may be little differences procedurally from court to court, but generally speaking, this is one court system.
Thank you.
Senator Whitley?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for taking my question. I'm going to ask you a similar question to the prior attorney about this balance that we as legislators have to embark on about, ensuring there's enough specificity in statute for the guardrails that were mentioned, and also, realizing our limitations in terms of experts and delegating to various bodies who have more expertise. And so thank you for including Rule 35, because I think that answered my question, about the specificity. But can you come up with any reason why this specificity should be in statute as opposed to rule?
I can't think of any reason why that would be necessary. When it comes to an attorney's evaluation of their ethical obligations, it's the rules of professional conduct and the court rules and the various court decisions and decisions by other adjudicatory bodies that we are looking to define our ethical obligations, and to a certain extent to evaluate whether we have perhaps committed misconduct. So I really think that this level of detail that you see in Rule 35 belongs in the rules promulgated by the Supreme Court, because that is consistent with law practice more broadly. Thanks for the question.
Thank you for that. And I just want to go back to an important point you made at the beginning of your testimony, and I don't want that to get lost, in that New Hampshire legal assistance is, having to turn away cases. And so that means there are many folks that are not able to access justice, which is an issue that we should care about deeply. And, what I've heard from you is that this is an important way to, bridge that gap and make that gap a little bit smaller. And I appreciate, the solutions-oriented nature of this. Are there any other solutions beyond this that the legislature should be considering in terms of making that gap of access to justice smaller?
How long do you have, Senator?
Right, it's a big question.
That's a terrific question. Certainly, the more staff that we have, the more people we can help. That is always true. But I will say, I do not think that New Hampshire or any other jurisdiction is going to lawyer their way to everyone having access to legal services. There just aren't enough lawyers. It's too expensive to go to law school. And so I really see innovations like this that in targeted, careful ways bring to the legal profession what we see in medicine, what we see in dentistry, that there are different levels of licensure in which people are authorized to do different kinds of things. This is what I see as being the future of more people being able to get the help that they need. And the income limits here, the 300% of poverty, that really is pretty low. I actually pulled those numbers. So for a household of 3, a couple and a child, a single parent of 2 children, that's about $77,000. A family with $77,000 in gross income is struggling to pay their bills. This is, again, not someone who is making a decision about whether or not they're going to choose an attorney or choose a paralegal. And frankly, those people at 200% of poverty are eligible for our services. So between 200 and 300% of poverty, those are really the folks that are very squeezed because they're not eligible for free services, but they're almost certainly not able to afford a meaningful amount of legal services at full freight.
Thank you, and thank you for your service.
Are there any further questions?
I'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you all very much.
Mr. Chief Justice, would you like to speak? You hadn't checked whether or not you wanted to speak. So I figured we'll go to you next.
Apologize for that oversight, Madam Chair, and Chairman of the committee. Good afternoon. For the record, I'm Gordon McDonald. I'm the Chief Justice of the New Hampshire Supreme Court. 2 years ago, with the leadership of this committee, the legislature passed what I believe is truly groundbreaking legislation to establish this pilot program permitting paraprofessionals to provide certain legal services under the supervision of an attorney in certain circuit courts. The effective date of your original bill was January 1st, 2023, in other words, a year ago, and the sunset was January 1st, 2025. Now in 2022, 2025 seemed light years away, but now, of course, it's right upon us. The bill obviously would extend the sunset date by 5 years and expand the program statewide. I urge approval for 3 reasons. First, in the year that it has been in operation, this pilot shows great promise. As indicated by your chair, Senator Carson, the sponsor, and also by Sarah Metz and Dustin, we have a track record now in our circuit courts. Based on the filings made to the Supreme Court as required by our rule, there have been 11 cases in which paraprofessionals have appeared. All of them have been in Manchester, and all of them have been under Chapter 173B, our domestic violence law. I have spoken with our circuit court administrative judge, Judge David King. He reports that all has gone smoothly from his perspective. And I've had a chance to speak with one of the presiding judges in our Manchester Circuit Court, Kim Chabot, and she's conducted personally several hearings involving paraprofessionals. They've done a good job, and they have been of great assistance to the court and obviously to the clients involved. That's reason one. Reason two is, as promising as these initial reports are, I believe we need to have more experience with this program before we can make an ultimate determination about its future. I'd particularly like to have more experience in other case types: divorce, parenting, landlord-tenant. And I do believe expanding the geography will expand the flexibility associated with it, expand the possibilities of bringing people into the program. Third, and my final point, is that the need that inspired this legislation in the first place, the access to justice gap between those who have legal representation and those who do not, is as achingly wide as ever. 15% of people who walk through our circuit court doors have an attorney. That means 85% do not. When you think that there are 120,000 filings in that court every year, the math is staggering. But the sum of those staggering numbers are individuals who are standing in a very unfamiliar place with basic human needs on the line. We need to do better. And this program provides a part of the solution, certainly not all of the solution. And it is well worth expanding it for 5 years, expanding it geographically, and giving it the time to prove itself. Thanks to this legislation, 11 of those clients did not have to stand alone. I do make one respectful suggestion to the committee.
Under the current chapter law, Section 3 of the chapter law, a report is due to the committee on January 1st, 2025. That is not affected by SB 361. I would suggest that a report that would be useful to the legislature should be due 1 year before the sunset date, so that we can get the information to the legislature and we can all consider what's in there and what an appropriate next step would be. Again, Madam Chair, I want to thank you for your leadership and the leadership of the other members of the committee. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Mr. Chief Justice. Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. The chair will call Mark Ruvalis.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Ruvalis, and I'm here in support of the bill. I'm a private practitioner and a trial lawyer at McLean Middleton. I'm also co-chair of the Supreme Court's Access to Justice Commission. I spoke to this committee in support of the passage of the bill on behalf of the Access to Justice Commission, and am here again to urge you to pass HB 361 to extend the pilot program. I join in the comments of the Chief Justice and Sarah Matson-Dustin. They made excellent points. I'm not going to repeat them there. This is an innovative program. This past November, I attended an ABA co-chairs, Access to Justice co-chairs conference where co-chairs who were in my position or judicial members of the judiciary came together in Ohio to talk about issues. One of them was this use of paralegals to expand representation for those who don't have it. And that's what we're talking about here. You heard the numbers from the Chief Justice. They are incredibly high in terms of how many people navigate the system on their own. And this bill helps to do that. And really, it just is getting started. And the expansion of this over 5 years, I think, will allow it to develop in a way so that it can be assessed in a deep way. I also think if the pilot is expanded and extended, it will give opportunities for private firms like mine who have 30 or so paralegals, many of whom would love to have an opportunity to do more and do pro bono work, which is where this would come down, and work with organizations like New Hampshire Legal Assistance in the courts at different programs, much like our attorneys do now with housing days or landlord and tenant days and family law days at different courts or individual representation. I do want to make one point about the supervision of the paralegals. It is no small incentive to make sure that paralegals are performing adequately and well before the courts, to be subject to the supervision of the court in the first instance, and ultimately to the Professional Conduct Committee. None of us as trial lawyers ever want to be called by a judge or the clerk of court to say, we want to talk to you about something that happened in court today. And those conversations occasionally happen, whether it's with attorneys, associates, partners, or other people that I'm responsible for. Senator Whitley, you were asking, should we defer to the judiciary who regulates the practice already? And I think that's a fair way to go about it. They do that now. We all want to avoid the Professional Conduct Committee at all costs, and so I don't make light of that. I think I not only supervise other attorneys. I use paralegals in my practice. A similar situation too, although it's not quite on point, is Sometimes I affiliate with out-of-state counsel who come in here and they have to operate under my supervision, or they're still under the supervision of the court, but the court looks to New Hampshire counsel to make sure that they're acting in accordance with our standards. So I think the notion that it's under the supervision of, the paralegals are under the supervision of attorneys generally is sufficient in this case with the existing enforcement mechanisms, not to mention the enforcement mechanisms under Rule 35. So with that, I urge you to pass the bill, and thank you for your support of it.
Thank you very much for your testimony this afternoon. Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none. The chair will call Louise Spencer.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, and to the committee. I hadn't planned to speak, but I thought that my experience might be a little bit relevant to the issue at hand today. I am an inactive member of the Vermont Bar. I became an attorney in a less than common way, which is that I clerked for the bar, which means that I never went to law school. And as such, I was a paralegal supervised by an attorney for 4 years. And I worked for legal aid. One of the points I wanted to make today is the cost of law school is prohibitive for many, many people. And when people come out of law school with such heavy debt, it makes it very difficult for them to go into public interest law and to practice, even though their hearts may really be there and they want to address the issues that the Chief Justice spoke to. It's very difficult when you have that kind of debt and a family, et cetera. So this provides a really good opportunity for people with the supervision and oversight. And I know what it's like to be a paralegal who works under an attorney, and boundaries are made very clear about what you can and cannot do. I think this is an excellent program. I admit I'm not familiar with all the details, but in hearing the testimony today, I just did want to make those couple of points. So,
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Okay, are there any other members of the public that would like to speak to Senate Bill 361 FN? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. We have a Thank you, Matthew. Okay. That's it, Matthew. We're going to go ahead and open the public hearing on Senate Bill 358 and recognize the prime sponsor, Senator Gannon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Gannon, I would represent the Center for Lyme District, District 23, Sandow, so I won't tell. First of all, let me premise by I'm a grandchild of immigrants. I'm sorry, I thank you. I support legal immigration. My daughter's best friends all have Brazilian parents, as she plays tons of soccer. So I have no problems with immigration before I start. This bill today is more on Driving Safety Act, SB 358. It'll codify in statute that New Hampshire does not validate driver's licenses from other states given to undocumented immigrants. We need to know who's coming into New Hampshire. Currently, law already prohibits using a New Hampshire driver's license to an undocumented resident. This legislation will clarify that the same standard applies to licenses from other states. The Biden administration has failed us on the border. We now have 300,000 a month coming in at our borders, both north and south. Every voter in New Hampshire, every person in the country, their number one issue is immigration. We have problems with illegal immigration on the northern and southern borders. New Hampshire has been experiencing an influx of fentanyl and other serious crimes due to lack of border security. We lost 100,000, approximately, give or take, dead in the last year. The cost in monetary cost. My data, I will get you all a copy of the Homeland Security report from Alexander Mayorkas, his open border policy. It's the Homeland Security brief dated November 13th, and there'll be a copy forthcoming to all of you. And that's where all my data is coming from as far as numbers. So they had estimated in this committee that $182 billion is spent in state, federal, and local costs due to undocumented aliens. There is $30 billion that does come back from tax contributions, but it's a net negative of $150 billion. We don't know who's coming here, and so we can't, in our state, we can't allow an illegal immigrant to possibly vote here. So I want to tell you what I'm talking about with that, because it's sort of off on a tangent, but it isn't. So I did call, driver's licenses are issued to illegal immigrants and enables them to break the law and attempt to vote in New Hampshire. Our neighboring state of Massachusetts is now giving licenses that have no, it doesn't say not for federal ID, it doesn't say for driving privileges only, they're giving out regular driver's licenses. So I called our Secretary of State, he put me in touch with Bud Fitch, who is the SOS's attorney. I was told we had this discussion on Friday, that if I came with an out-of-state license and I went to vote today, that I would be allowed to, if I said I had an address and showed this, and no matter what it said, they said if it looked like a regular license. So I decided to try that this morning. I went to the registration table. I didn't go all the way through it because that would have been a felony, but I did say to you, if I presented with you an out-of-state license, and they said, does it look like a regular Mass license or another state license? I said it would. And they said, would you give us an address where you'd said you're staying? They said your vote would be counted in today's vote count. So we don't want to foster, again, a side issue, but we don't want to foster illegal voting. Recognizing an out-of-state license creates an incentive for more illegal immigration, more drug trafficking, and crime that we can't handle in New Hampshire. This bill will prevent and keep our communities safer. States are being forced to deal with the executive order's failure, as I have said. And just last year in New Hampshire, very near me, a town out of my district, we had a mass murderer from Brazil living in one of our communities. And I'm sure almost every single person who comes to us from Brazil is a good person. But if we do not vet the people who are coming, we have problems. This town was near a sanctuary city. Again, it was a mass murder of 12 people in Brazil. He was convicted. We had, again, I believe it was Dover nearby. We had an arms dealer living in plain sight, who again, was illegal, but here. So we need to do a better job vetting people. Many police officers will not call the federal authorities when they encounter an illegal immigrant because town policies will not allow them to. The Manchester police chief has testified, I believe it was even here, that he said he will not call to report illegals unless, and then instead he lets them out into the community. He said ICE doesn't pick them up, the feds don't come, so I let them out. So now we're forced to act because of the inaction of some of our state officials and the federal government. Last year, in this body, we passed the anti-sanctuary city bill in the Senate. This year, 358 will prohibit the issuance of New Hampshire driver's licenses transferred from another state that allows an undocumented individual to obtain one. Some states have the mark not for federal ID, some say for driving privileges only, and other states are just giving a regular license, and they're not doing a proper job in vetting them. Giving a driver's license to an undocumented alien is a reward for people who have already circumvented the law. The New Hampshire DMV has said the implementation of giving licenses to illegals would increase the opportunity for fraudulent activity regarding identity documentation and documentation regarding residency. In summary, if you come illegally to the U.S., you should not possess a state-issued driver's license and certainly not get one in New Hampshire. This idea would be the start of allowing access to public services, other privileges that we afford lawful residents, and allow unvetted people into our state. Again, we support legal immigration, but not illegal immigration. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Senator. Are there any questions from the committee?
Thank you.
Seeing none. Thank you. Okay, there are a couple people who are on the list, and I just want to call their names just to see if you want to speak, and that's for just management of the time that we have. Louise Spencer, do you want to speak on this? Okay. And Marcia Fedor, do you wish to speak at all? Okay. I just want to make sure before we start going down the people who do want to speak. Okay. We're going to hear from Gilles Bissonnette. Good afternoon, Mr. Bissonnette. Oh.
Press the button.
Yes.
You'd think I would know that by now. I'm sorry.
That's okay. It happens.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Gilles Bissonnette, I'm the legal director of the ACLU of New Hampshire. We are in opposition to this bill, and I do want to be very clear what this bill doesn't do and what it does. So we don't, in New Hampshire, give driver's license to undocumented New Hampshire residents. We don't do that. What this bill, though, does, it goes one step further, right? And it basically prohibits New Hampshire from recognizing driver's licenses that have been issued to undocumented individuals from the other states that do that. So I just want to be very clear. We don't issue driver's licenses in New Hampshire. With or without this bill, that wouldn't happen absent other legislation. So in many respects, though, my perspective is that this bill is actually significantly overbroad insofar as it's pretty extreme, in fact, for a state to say we are not going to recognize licenses that other states issue. That this debate has come up in the context of marriage licenses, and here New Hampshire would be entering this kind of fray, this debate with respect to is it or is it not permissible for New Hampshire to not recognize a license that's been lawfully issued by another state. And that's because, New Hampshire is among the many states that have entered into a compact, though this bill attempts to modify it, a compact that recognizes the driver's licenses of other states. And that's just for continuity, right? Because people are traveling throughout the United States, throughout countries. And it I do think would create some element of kind of chaos if we were to kind of amend or abrogate that compact. So that's kind of, a legal concern. But I actually have a kind of, I think, a policy concern as well. And that's that the roads are safer if everyone that's using them has passed a driver's test and is licensed. And this is because obviously having a driver's license promotes public safety. So in many respects, I actually think this bill undermines public safety to some extent. But I know that's obviously not the intent of the bill, but that is my perspective, and that's because by expanding access to driver's licenses for everyone, frankly, including undocumented residents, what other states have done have actually increased safety on their roads, right? And it makes sense. When you get a driver's license, you've taken a test, a written test. You have done a driving test. You maybe even have car insurance, right? So which actually help reduces costs for everyone on the roadways in the event that there's an accident. So my view is that this bill would really discourage a category of already licensed and insured New Hampshire visitors, those who are undocumented from driving with a license in the state when they've already been deemed to drive safely. So I really think to some extent, it really kind of targets those individuals who've really shown that they can drive safely. And I think that's one of the underlying concerns that we have with this bill. And of course, because they have a license, we would actually, if there was a stop, they would know who the people are. So I think contrary to, maybe some of the justifications for this, of do we know who's in the United States? In fact, with a driver's license, you would know who has entered the state if there had been a motor vehicle violation or a traffic accident involving one of those individuals with a license. Yet another reason, I think, why this actually promotes, recognizing these licenses promotes public safety rather than hindering it. And I think Lastly, I just think there's some real practical ramifications to this. I do want to uplift the Department of Safety's fiscal note to this bill, where it says that one new position would be needed to research and keep a list of invalid license classes up to date. So there is here a burden that I don't think is insignificant on safety in the DMV, not only to kind of go through and evaluate licenses that would fall under this bill, but I also think there's a practical ramifications, right, to our state troopers who are monitoring our highways. They would have to, I think, maybe even assess when they get a driver's license. Would they have to assess, looking at a license, whether the person's undocumented or not? I'm not entirely sure. Many licenses that are given to undocumented individuals don't indicate that they're undocumented. They would just be non-Real ID compliant licenses. So I think this does place, to some extent, a burden on our troopers as well that I do want to flag. So there, I think there are some real practical concerns. I also don't think this bill addresses the immigration crisis. I know there are strong views out there that we have an immigration crisis. I don't think this really does anything to address that. In fact, what it would do, right, is criminalize individuals who have already been deemed to drive safely in other states. That's all it would do. So I really, I just, this is not a view that I share. And with respect to voting, there's no widespread voter fraud in New Hampshire. I just want to be very clear. The Secretary of State has made that clear. You can have voter fraud with or without a license, even though there's very little voter fraud in the state. And I don't think we've seen evidence that any undocumented individual has ever voted. And I do want to be very clear what licenses are used for during the voting process. It's not to establish citizenship, right? Because non-citizens who are lawfully here too can have driver's licenses. It's to establish that you are who you say you are when you go to the polling place. We have other mechanisms in place in our voting laws that help evaluate and ensure that it is only citizens who are voting, but it is not identification. So I just wanted to be very clear on that. So with that, I'll just conclude my testimony. We would ask that the committee deem this bill inexpedient to legislate.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bissonnette. Senator Gannon has a question, then Senator Whitley.
Thank you, Attorney Bissonnette. I'm sure you're aware that most states don't issue driver's licenses to undocumented aliens, the majority.
That's correct. That's correct, yep.
And are you aware that other states have this very law? It's been challenged and it's been upheld?
I'm only aware of one state. If there are other states, that would be good for me to know, but I'm only aware of one state, and I'm not aware of whether or not there's been an actual legal conclusion made on this piece of legislation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Whitley?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for taking my question. You touched on your testimony, but I haven't read it in depth. But do you identify any constitutional issues with this in terms of interstate travel or, our state recognizing other states' laws, things like that?
Yeah, so there are multiple issues the legal questions. I don't know if I could say definitively one way or the other, but there are legitimate questions that are out there concerning full faith and credit, concerning right to travel. I do think the interstate compact issue is a real one. It is true that this bill tries to amend that compact, but remember, that only works if there's reciprocity throughout everyone. So having all the states, so having one state kind of unilaterally amend it, I think kind of upends the whole point behind that compact, which is all the states enter into it and agree to it, that we have reciprocity to ensure continuity, to ensure that people can travel freely without knowing, oh my gosh, I'm in a state now, I have no idea what the law is, but I've accidentally violated the law with respect to licenses. That's the point, right, behind that particular statute. And I did uplift those in our testimony. Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Senator Chandley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You began by saying that we do not issue driver's licenses in the state of New Hampshire to undocumented individuals. And you said this bill apparently goes a step further because now we would not recognize licenses issued to people in other states. Would you agree with me that it might actually be that we're going 2 steps further? Because additionally, as I read it, this bill then says any person driving with one of those licenses would be guilty or could be charged with a misdemeanor.
Yeah, no, I mean, that is our position, right, is you have now this kind of criminal penalty that's attached to this. And this is attached even if there's like inadvertence, right? Which you really could imagine happening, right? An individual who's licensed in Massachusetts is driving to visit a family member in Nashua, and they get pulled over, and boom, now all of a sudden they're funneled into our criminal justice system, even though they've been deemed to be able to drive safely in Massachusetts. And so I think the penalty obviously is significant. So I think that would be our position. Again, if this bill just said, in New Hampshire, we don't issue driver's licenses to New Hampshire residents, I think I would, I have separate policy views on that, but that would just reflect the status quo. The concern that this goes further than that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you
Thank you,
very
Madam
much.
Chair. Appreciate it.
The chair will call Eva Castillo. Good afternoon, Ms. Castillo.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Eva Castillo. I'm an immigrant. I live in Manchester. I am here to speak against this bill. First of all, the bill doesn't do anything for the citizens of New Hampshire or for our state. The way the bill is written is not going to stop the influx of people that are undocumented. The fentanyl, the drugs, is not really going to do anything. I am a Manchester Police Commissioner. I have been in the commission, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the commission or the chief or anybody in their neighbor. I'm just speaking as a person. I have worked very hard with the police departments to bridge the gap and to make sure that people trust the police. The only way to enforce this bill would be to engage in profiling. I don't want to go back to the days where the police are doing profiling and my friends that live in other states refuse to come to New Hampshire because your cops are racist here, which is not true. We have very honorable police officers and we have very good policies that prevent from doing that, but this is going to give a bad taste to New Hampshire. We are lucky that we live in a beautiful state that has everything, lakes, mountains, the ocean, and people come here for vacation or to visit. This is going to really stop people from coming here. So it's going to end up affecting our hospitality industry. It's going to end up affecting the businesses because people come here shopping without having to pay the tax. Voting was broad, I have experience, and if you look at, I just did a video with the Secretary of State welcoming new immigrants to vote. And one of the things I speak about is how I've been in this country since 1976, and I have worked in every single election since I moved here, and I was not a citizen. I did not have the right to vote, and my job was to help people and make people that had the right exercise that right. When I became a citizen, and you see it in the video, I came to Concord, and I went straight through from Concord to City Hall with my new citizenship to register to vote. I did not even stop for coffee. That's how proud I was. And today, before I came, I made sure that I voted before coming here. People do not vote. People use the ID to vote, but if I show up to register and I work as a volunteer in many polls in Manchester, they all bring their citizenship. If they don't, they bring their ID, but then they have to follow up within a week, otherwise the vote is null. So this bill really doesn't do anything other than just tag immigrants and leave a bad taste in New Hampshire. As I was driving here, I saw the big sign, "Welcome to New Hampshire." This is going to undo all of that. Everything that we're doing is going to be bad PR for our state, and it's not going to accomplish anything other than bad stuff. So please vote ITL.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Excuse me, are there any questions from the committee? Okay. Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
The chair will call Leo Velaz. Good afternoon, Mr. Velaz.
Okay, good
There you go.
afternoon. Thank you, Madam Secretary. I'm on this hearing today to oppose the bill because I'm an immigrant myself and I have some concerns about it. One of them is being an immigrant and not looking like a natural American citizen, even though I'm a citizen. I'll just driving around, and when I get pulled over, and they see that I have my license with me, through this bill, they'll be asking me for additional papers. From what I see here, they will be asking for additional papers to see if I'm documented or not. So that way, a person like myself who has his core values as a conservative will be one more thing just making me wonder why am I trying to be a conservative if the senators that should be representing me taking the time to learn about me, they're just trying to make it hard for everybody. What I'm trying to say is I'm a big person on getting to know people, getting to know the real reality. I understand that once you're there, you're trying to do your best to prevent drugs, to make our city safe, to make everything better. And I understand that and I appreciate that. But when I read a bill like this, it makes me wonder if the gap from what we're living now and from what you guys are living is too far apart. So I was thinking if we could have more conversation about this, because on the core value, I believe you guys are trying to do the right thing. It's just that a bill like this sends the wrong message. My mother-in-law lives in Massachusetts. She comes here at least once a week. She's an immigrant herself. She's a citizen. When she gets pulled over, what would be the consequence of that? Because she has a license, the license, it doesn't discriminate if she's a citizen or not, if she has documented or not. So what's going to be the follow-up? Will the cop, will the street trooper will be asking her about her legal documents or just let her leave? So those kind of questions is what I need to know. And, you know, on the core value, I'm just trying, I came here, I was 16 years old. I love this country more than I love Brazil. I'm from Brazil. I have my wife here, I have my son here, I have my pastor, and a lot of friends. So I'm just trying to understand more and hopefully talk more with you so we can get in a common denominator. You spoke about a guy who killed people. You could be sure that there is a lot of channels of communications between Brazilians, and we are all trying to find the guy. There's another guy, another Brazilian that had a armed robbery last week, and we all try to help the police to get these guys, because people are bad in all places, and if we have more communications, we can for sure try to get them. We're not here for just take from United States. We are here to build our families, build our communities, and just try to grow and be better, do better. So this is I want to pass through you, and hopefully we can start talking more. All right?
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Velaz. Are there any questions from the committee? Senator Whitley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for bringing your family. You have a beautiful family, and thank you for taking my question. You mentioned, for example, your mother-in-law, you know, she would be coming back and forth. We're very close to Massachusetts, of course.
Yes.
I have family there too. We're going back and forth all the time. And, you know, regardless of how your mother-in-law received her license, it doesn't say documented or undocumented. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. So I guess your point is that, this bill could be used as just a targeting tool? Was that what you were trying to?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
yes. And like El Castillo mentioned, we know the police, the troopers, they are not trying to do that because we have a lot of meetings with them. And what we see, it's people trying to get bad people down and lift the people that wants to do better in their community, a helping hand or just trying to do better. So a bill like this would just get people to be like, I don't want to, even though I'm a citizen, I don't want to go there just because of the discrimination. So that's one thing that would be.
Thank you very much. I would just like to add something. I want to thank you for bringing your son so he can see democracy in action. It's a great life lesson. Thank you. Okay, the chair will call Bruno De Brito. Oh,
I
I'm
just a
sorry.
quick question. So you had said you have a New Hampshire license, right?
Yes.
So and at the beginning, you're saying what would happen to me? You have a valid New Hampshire license, you've been vetted, you're a citizen. Nothing
Yes.
would happen to you.
Yes.
The police officer wouldn't have any reason to hold you for.
Okay. Do you mind telling me what would happen to my mother-in-law?
I'm thinking about that.
All right,
Thank you.
We can talk more.
Thank you again very much. Mr. De Brito? Okay.
Mr. DeBrano, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you doing, Senator?
Doing well, thank you.
So my name is Bruno De Brito. I am president of the New Hampshire Brazilian Council and also an immigration attorney. I'm going to, try to go straight to the point here. The first concept I would like to touch upon is the legality of this bill. There is a potential constitutional violation. Under the 10th Amendment, the states have been reserved the powers, the sovereignty powers that have not been allocated to the federal government. And the police power is one of these powers, which the police power is the ability of the states to issue licenses. However, trying to restrict other licenses that were legally issued by other states is a potential violation of the full faith and credit clause, which will demise the recognition of a valid documentation by other states in New Hampshire. It's the same as same-sex marriage, as if it is allowed in other states, New Hampshire cannot simply invalidate the marriage, just for the sake of doing so. Another, another issue that I would like to touch upon is inquiring immigration status. If a police officer in any way tries to inquire the immigration status of another, it is illegal. It has been set by the Supreme Court in U.S. v. Arizona, 2012, and most recently, U.S. v. Texas, 2023. Immigration is a strictly power that has been reserved by the federal government, and the states do not have any say as to that. So if an officer tries to implement any sort of immigration law, there will be a constitutional violation. Also, I would like to, to ask you, we have a lot of immigrants in the state. There has been a research conducted by New Americans Economy that estimates that we have almost 100,000 immigrants in the state of New Hampshire, and about 10% of them are undocumented. But we don't really think much about it. And do you know what is the majority immigrant nationality we have in the state of New Hampshire? Does anybody know? You guessed it right, it's Canadians. Yeah, it's Canadians. But we don't think much about it. The first thing that, comes to our mind, is Mexicans, but it's not. And another thing that I just, a fun fact, do you guys know when Border Patrol was first implemented? Does anybody know that? Yeah, so 1924, but it only became truly implemented in 1929. And I only know this because I practice immigration law, and you cannot find it on Google. It's a very difficult information to look for. So before then, everybody who came to the United States, if we compare to the laws that we have today, essentially everybody coming to Ellis Island and other port of entries would be considered asylees, asylum law, which we have a big problem currently right now. I just would like to touch upon some of the comments Senator Gannon touched upon. So the roads being unsafe, it would quite do the opposite, as if individuals would learn the rules of the road, I believe the roads would actually become safer instead of unsafer. And other states, currently, there are 18 states that have been enacted this type of legislation that would permit undocumented immigrants to possess a driver's license. And these states, they have found that individuals who didn't have a license before, but now they do, and they get into an accident, the probability of them remaining on the scene rises to almost 90%. And the hit and runs have reduced dramatically. Driving drunk has been reduced tremendously in a lot of the states. A lot of these issues that people wouldn't have known if they had gone through the studying on the rules of the roads, that they were eradicated somewhat. The voting issue, you touched upon that. You mentioned that you went this morning to the voting polls, and you just had a driver's license from another state, or you talked about having a driver's license for another state. So in New Hampshire, you can indeed vote with a driver's license. As a matter of fact, that's what I used this morning to vote. But in order for you to register to vote, there is a box that you must affirm or swear that you are a U.S. citizen and you are eligible to vote. There is no getting around it. And if you are not born in this country, you have to go to City Hall and you have to provide your naturalization certificate. That's what I had to do when I registered to vote. You cannot simply show your driver's license and say, I want to vote. It's it seems like a simple process because you're already registered, but it's a lot more complex than that. And if you'd like, we can go right after here. I can wait for you. We can, try it out. Another issue that you talked about is criminals. We have a bunch of Brazilians, behind here. And I can affirm on behalf of all of them that we don't like criminals, either. And, that guy that you talked about, unfortunately, he lived in Merrimack. And it is, very unfortunate, but it is something that we are cognizant of, that it is, a problem that we do have some criminals in our community, people who commit crimes, and they come here. But so, our Americans, I live in a neighborhood that, a lot of people have been arrested. And it is unfortunate. But this guy, I can guarantee you, because we work a lot with law enforcement, from local police departments to the, like AG's office, we work with them. Like we don't want, criminals living, like amongst us. So, like we have been doing like hard work with law enforcement to do instructional videos, community meetings, where police, they come to, churches and so forth, to encourage people to report crimes. And we have been very successful. I can guarantee you, if this guy comes back tomorrow, someone will call the police on him because, the Brazilian community, they're very close. Somebody will know. So if your issue, like is about criminals, let's work together. But not just, like immigrants, like everybody. It's a very serious problem. So let's work together on that. And and unfortunately, this legislation, Senator, in my opinion, like all it does is generate fear in our community. And right now we're dealing with a lot of problems of mental health, children who are suffering from post-traumatic distress, from crossing the border, watching their parents living in fear on a daily basis. And we're trying to, to create, programs that, provide support, to these children, like in family and good people. You even mentioned, like a lot of them, like are good people. So let's work together to, focus on on bad things, on things that, like really matter. Like our veterans, they have been, like left out. We have a very serious opioid crisis. Let's work together on these, like issues and not try to, generate fear on, like the little people. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. DeBretta. Questions? Florida has there's a couple states that have this law or similar laws. Large state, 40 million, settled over, it's been brought forth and it's so far hasn't been overturned. What would you say to, because you brought up constitutional issues in your case, which I'll look up. Well, I haven't looked up U.S., Arizona in a long time. The Florida law, what do you take of that being a similar law to this, which has been existing in Florida?
Yeah, so the current law, it is being challenged, and it did generate fear. A lot of like a lot of the immigrants from Florida, they came to to Massachusetts and some to New Hampshire actually. The majority to Massachusetts, and it's not just the legality.
So yeah, that was what I was after. I understand the fear part. I didn't know if you had the legal issue that the challenge, is it what you said?
Yeah, it's still pending, it's still going on.
I'll see what's going on too. Thank you very much.
All right, you're very welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Is it Len Gannon? Jen Gannon? Looks like my name almost, except for the beginning. And they said they wanted to speak, but I don't see anyone. Unless Senator Whitley says my eyes are really bad, which could be. The bottom one?
That's you.
Jen Gannon?
No, that's you.
Oh, I couldn't make it out. I didn't have my glasses on, was I? Just saw last name. Anyone else wish to testify in this bill? Come on up. Welcome, sir.
So my name is Aloysio Costa. I'm a pastor from Nashua. Their pastor, his pastor, and some of our members are from Massachusetts. I lived in Massachusetts for 18 years. My 3 kids were born there. So I have family there. I have people from my church that lives in Massachusetts. And as a pastor, I'm a person who tries to bring solutions to people. And Massachusetts and New Hampshire are very close. Not only from Massachusetts, but I help people from other states. And bringing fear, more fear, to people, it's not going to help. I don't think that is going to be helpful, not only for me, but I speak on behalf of all the pastors that leads churches that are constituted by people with those kinds of situations. And I understand that you guys have the legal part of it to deal with. But at the same time, we have to think about the human part of it. Because there are people here that came and they have no family here. They have no English. And they depend a lot on the churches and institutions that help them. And right now, for example, I'm helping a lady in Lowell. Lowell is right next to Nashville, where our church is. And when they hear something like this, when are they going to come to my office? When are they going to come to the church? They're going to be afraid. And I've been here for 18 years already. And I love Massachusetts, but I love New Hampshire more. And I'm that kind of person who I root for Celtics, Red Sox, Patriots, and anything from out state. That's what I root for. And I try to defend New Hampshire everywhere I go. And even in Brazil, people, when they're talking about America, they say that our state is a discriminating state, a racist state. And sometimes there's nothing I can say. Sometimes there's nothing I can do. And that's what people are going to feel. Because my face is not going to change, even though I'm legal in America, but my face is still going to be the same. And as a police officer, when I was in Brazil, I was a police officer. When the police officer stops me, he's going to look at my face and he's going to judge me by the color of my face? Or they're going to ask all the citizens, all the people from another state? Or they're going to focus only on the black people, brown people, Spanish people, Asian. Actually, I'm talking about Brazil, but I have people from Guatemala, from Mexico, even from India, personally. And I think this is going to create another big problem for the pastors, for the churches, and for all the institutions that are trying to help people with depression, suicidals. I think we should take that into consideration, and that's why I wanted to speak. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony, Pastor. Seeing no questions, have a great day. Thank you. Does anyone else wish to testify who hasn't had the opportunity, who didn't sign in? Seeing none, that ends the hearing. Thank you all.